next one, I want to bring together some European countries, so I want to talk about Germany, Italy, and Norway.
Denmark expressed an interest in joining the World Showcase before the original park opened, and appeared on some of the initial drawings in the late 1970s, and then it disappeared. But interestingly, Disney put up a single building of somewhat vague Scandinavian design on a plot of land between Mexico and China. And what was that building, you may ask? That would be a restroom. The pitch was to create a Scandinavia pavilion that would include Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And then it fell apart yet again. By now, Norway was the most interested of the three. In 1985, the design was revised to be called Norway, Gateway to Scandinavia. It kept pushing forward and went through several modifications and changes, ultimately leading to it just being Norway, with a planned opening in the spring of 1988. And this pavilion was going to have one thing that no other pavilion had had to this point: a thrill ride. This was to be an e-ticket type of attraction, and only the second attraction in all of World Showcase. The pavilion soft opened in May of 1988, but the official opening and dedication of the Norway Pavilion was on Friday, June 3rd, 1988.
You know, earlier the pavilion was officially opened with a fabulous, and I mean fabulous, celebration, including the Royal Norwegian Guard Band and the World Dancers. And don't forget, too, we had a special dedication by the Crown Prince Harald of Norway.
Ladies and gentlemen, wishing the best of luck to Disney World and those who will be responsible for the operation of the pavilion, I hereby declare the Norway Pavilion open. Thank you.
The Norwegian government kicked in money for a few years for upkeep of the pavilion, but in 2002 they ended their arrangement because they didn't see a return that was significant enough for them. They had indicated that based on what they saw, they didn't see an influx of tourists to the actual country as they claimed to have in the past. Incidentally, the U.S. Embassy lobbied Norway on Disney's behalf to keep the stake, but to no avail. Ultimately, the government of Norway pulled out of the Epcot pavilion. The basic design of the pavilion is a courtyard, with another small area on the outside of the courtyard. The idea was to create a town that evokes visions of an oceanside town, somewhere along the North Sea. Now, one thing about the pavilion is that there is nothing along the lagoon to speak of. But it does stand in the place that was once intended for Denmark and did have the bathrooms on opening day. If we approach Norway from Mexico, the first thing we encounter is the Royal Summer House, which is the recreation of the faux Norway, also known as Arendelle, from the movie Frozen. Next up, as you walk along, is the Stave Church. Now, a stave church is a medieval wooden Christian church building once common in northwestern Europe. The name derives from the building structure of post and lintel construction. Now, there's a statue of King Olaf II. He ruled Norway in the early thousands in the Common Era and is credited with bringing Norway into the modern era. Now, tucked in behind the Stave Church is a statue of runner Grete Waitz. She was a Norwegian marathon runner and former world record holder. Now, behind the statue, you'll see an unusual building. It has a grass roof. Now, this is a traditional Scandinavian type of green roof covered with sod on top of several layers of birch bark on gently sloping wooden roof boards. Until the late 19th century, it was the most common roof on rural log houses in Norway and large parts of the rest of Scandinavia. It's so ingenious, it's very clever, isn't it? Finally, as you walk along, you'll reach the courtyard of the town. The fortress that dominates the pavilion and appears on the right of the courtyard is home to the Akershus Royal Banquet Hall. This imposing fortress first began construction in the late 1290s in Oslo by King Haakon V, replacing Tenderberg as one of the two most important Norwegian castles of the period. If you look closely, you'll see ornate metal objects that look like cattle horns on the side of the building. These are anchor points that connect iron rods going through the building, which actually supports the heavy stone structure. Now, don't miss the detail in the stonework, and even notice a window that has been bricked over. Now, straight back in the pavilion is the attraction entrance and some detailed rock work that represents the fjords in the country. Iceland is typified by the white stucco and stone-trimmed Information and Maelstrom buildings. To the left is the gift shop known as the Gallery and the Puffin's Roost. Its architecture shows the inland farm log construction of Stetsdale. The fjording shop with its gabled windows captures the spirit of Bergen. Let's talk for a minute about drinking around the world. There is an alcoholic coffee available inside the Kringla Bakery called Viking Coffee. There's also a beverage cart that offers Danish Jarlsberg beer, a couple of non-Norwegian wines, and a Scandinavian liquor called Line Aquavit Glacier, which is served by the shot. The story is that if you can take the shot and don't grimace within 5 seconds, you're a true Viking. Care to try it out? Norway sponsored the pavilion until the early 2000s. At that point, Disney picked up the maintenance costs. Then along came the movie Frozen, which was a surprise hit, even to Disney. But Disney wasn't content and wanted to really promote Queen Elsa and the movie. So they made a fateful decision that since Frozen was based on a story called The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen, who was from Denmark, they would add some thematic things from the movie to the Norway pavilion, which of course had been Scandinavia and before that Denmark. And I think that if they had decided to simply re-theme the pavilion back to Norway, gateway to Scandinavia, and then built Arendelle to the side, it would have worked. Certainly they could have paid tribute to Hans Christian Andersen as well, but instead they left it as Norway and meshed up the pavilion itself into a hybrid of the animated movie and a fictitious place with the actual country, and then also changed the Norway ride into a Frozen-themed attraction. Before it became the Frozen Ever After, it was called the Maelstrom, and it had a post-show movie. Disney promoted the Maelstrom thusly. When was the last time you went over a waterfall backwards, had your life threatened by a nasty old three-headed river troll, come within a whisker of a 12-foot polar bear, challenged whitewater rapids, and braved thunderous storm-tossed North Sea? The last time may be the first time you ride the Maelstrom, the new thriller at Epcot Center. It's a sea adventure of legendary proportions, now open in the fabulous new Norway showcase.
This is a troll. And this is not a troll. This is Gita. And like all the townspeople in Epcot's Norway Pavilion, Gita is actually from Norway. You know, Gita is just one of the many reasons that the Norway Pavilion makes you feel like you're actually in Norway. Oh, one more thing, Gita. I'm here for the world premiere of the famous Maelstrom thrill ride. Do you think I should go in the first boat?
Ja, det står tufft nok til det.
I beg your pardon?
That means either you have to be very brave or very foolish.
Well, I'm halfway there.
Hey, you know, it's decision time, and Webster defines Maelstrom as a powerful, often violent whirlpool, sucking in objects within a given radius. To ride or not to ride? That is the question. I have the answer. No, I'm not riding. You ride. Good luck, guys. Here we go. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bon voyage. Good sweet. Hey, all right. Looks like you made it. Maybe you got a little wet out there, huh? Hey, tell me, what'd you think about it?
Oh, it was great. I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic.
Great family ride, and I especially enjoyed the storm at the North Sea.
Oh, that's fun. You like things like that. Oh, boy, I'm glad I didn't go. But let's take a look at that ride for ourselves. Dynamite. You know, that looks like something Jane and Bryant might enjoy, but not moi, because I'm your basic chicken.
They encouraged you to conquer the Maelstrom. All you needed was the guts of a Viking. The reality didn't quite live up to the hype, though. It was hardly a thrill ride requiring the guts of a Viking.
You are not the first to pass this day. Nor shall you be the last. Those who seek the spirit of Norway face peril and adventure, but more often find beauty and charm.
My Homeland begrüßen wir unsere Familienmitglieder aus Deutschland recht herzlich.
Germany is one of the 9 opening day pavilions that made up the World Showcase half of Epcot. Germany holds the distinction of having been an enemy in World War II. Remember that the pavilions were being designed in the mid-1970s. That's a span of less than 30 years between the end of the war and planning for Epcot. Imagineers had to balance representing Germany, the country, and its rich history while not focusing on the parts of recent history that sort of involved the war. There was also an additional problem that you had a divided, that is, East and West Germany. Basically, what you see is a mashup of Bavaria, Austria, and some small towns in the south. The primary concept was to incorporate elements of the Rhine River region that's in the south of Germany that runs through Bavaria and Austria. The Imagineers said of the design that it promoted feelings of Gemütlichkeit, or friendliness. To bring it all together, the main design of the buildings are Baroque. If you stand out by the lagoon and look into the pavilion, you'll notice that there's a feeling of a small village of sorts. There are buildings surrounding a main plaza, or the Platz. That square itself is evocative of a more or less typical town in the Rhine region. Notice that there's a fountain in the middle of the Platz, and it's located toward the back. This central fountain was common throughout the Middle Ages in all of the European countries and most of the towns around the countryside. Now you should notice that there's a column in the fountain with an unusual statue atop it. The statue is of a man on a horse with a spear killing a dragon. That man is St. George, the patron saint of soldiers. Now behind the fountain is a glockenspiel, which literally means bell player. It's placed within the clock tower on the wall. This clock is modeled after several clock towers in the towns along the Rhine. Every hour, the glockenspiel chimes, and a mechanical rooster emerges and begins the show with a flutter of its wings, followed by figures of a boy and a girl in Bavarian garb who strike the hour on a bell. As you look down and around, don't miss the fact that there is a version of cobblestone streets beneath your feet. This is what you might expect in a town like this, though of course Disney made sure that it was even and well made and that it's easy for guests to navigate. The design here is interesting because it was inspired by something more central in Germany, the Römer in Frankfurt. The Römer belongs to the Römer family who used it for their business until they sold it to the city council in 1405. An Allied bombing raid on March of 1942 destroyed the original building, but it's since been rebuilt. That makes this the only building that's directly related to World War II. Modeled after the Historisches Kaufhaus, or the Historical Merchants Hall, found in Freiburg. Now, if you look up at the second floor of this building, you'll notice that there are 3 kings standing along the balcony. These are the Kings Philip the Beautiful, Emperor Charles V, and Emperor Ferdinand I, if you look at them left to right. But there were actually 4 kings of Habsburg. Omitted is Emperor Maximilian I. Now, since the Epcot version of the building is a scaled-down reproduction of the original, there wasn't room for all 4 leaders. As you continue to walk along the Platz, you're in the middle of this horseshoe, and you're looking up at the Burg, or the fortress. A sign welcomes you and says, Willkommen. Both restaurants are in this area, but we'll get back to them in a bit. Depictions of lions, bears, and the crowns adorn the building. These are common in Germany on buildings, and are typically considered as family crests or town seals or things of that nature. The pavilion was supposed to have a Rhine River cruise ride. According to the Walt Disney Company's 1976 annual report, the Rhine River cruise was to be a cruise down Germany's most famous rivers, the Rhine, the Tauber, and the Ruhr and the Isar. Detailed miniatures of famous landmarks will also be seen, including one of the Cologne Cathedral. But major budget cuts scrapped the attraction. There is some debate about how far along in development the cruise got. The show building for the Rhine River cruise was never actually built. The load platform was built, and the land was cleared for the bulk of the ride's show building. One last thing about the ride. For a period of time from Epcot opening in 1982 until about 1988 or so, there was a huge wooden door at the end of the plaza behind St. George's statue and next to the Biergarten. In 1988, when it became clear they weren't going to be adding the ride anytime in the near future, they plastered over the doors and put up a mural. If you walk straight back in the pavilion and under the Willkommen sign, you will be standing on what would have been the entry into the Rhine River cruise. If you knock on the wall with the painting, you will hear that it's hollow behind it. Now, if you think about the relationship back to the model train, they kind of incorporated some of that into the train design with the countryside that you see, and you get an impression of what it's like to be in the southern part of Germany. So it's sort of similar to what they had in mind, and it's kind of interesting how they carried that thought process into something else that they decided to do later. The layout is actually 3 independent loops. Each loop has a different train running on the tracks. The trains take a tour around the village and the countryside. The railroad uses model trains from a German company, Lehmann Grossbahn, also known as LGB. Now, the Bavarian village they're showing there is both picturesque in its overall appearance and detailed in its execution, as is the surrounding countryside. Buildings represent different functions and architectural styles. There are public spaces such as city halls and churches, as well as businesses and private residences. There's even a mountainside castle. Naturally, there's a train depot. The Imagineers went to great lengths to ensure the items sold in the shops were authentic. There's also the Steinhaus, or Stone House, which sells beautiful German beer steins. This store also offers a large selection of cuckoo clocks, a commodity synonymous with the Black Forest region of Germany. Beautiful and collectible crystal items can be had here: plush teddies, the famous teddy bears, and wood-crafted toys, confections, and more. Now, there is a German tradition that's represented here that we may think is a little odd: the pickle ornament. A large selection of these pickle ornaments is available in Die Weihnachtsecke. Now, don't miss the beauty of the woodwork in the shop itself. And the woodwork is really, really well done, and the attention to detail is outstanding. And don't forget to look up at the ceiling, and take time to look at the beautiful stained glass window of the German artisan at work. There was a nod to Snow White in the Platz itself, and being one of the Grimm brothers' fairy tales. Snow White can be found in the Germany Pavilion. She's actually near the wishing well, and essentially that is the wishing well that Snow White makes her wish in the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs movie. It's amazing how much attention they put into it. Go over by it sometime and just stand there and take a look at it. You'll be amazed at just how detailed it really is. Now, what visit to any World Showcase Pavilion, much less the Germany Pavilion, would be complete without drinking around the world? Visit the Beer Wagon. This is the spot to purchase a coldish brew and a pretzel. Several traditional German beers are offered, but the big draw to this pavilion, and the main reason people come here, is the Biergarten. Inside the castle, it's pretty much straight back in the pavilion, is where Oktoberfest is celebrated 12 months of the year. It's surprising how well the Imagineers recreated the atmosphere of a 16th century town in Rothenburg. It's perpetually nighttime. Long tables of 8 are positioned around a semicircle on 3 tiers, all facing the stage. Meals are served buffet style. You fix your plates and take them to your table. Offerings include salads, traditional sausages, sauerbraten, sauerkraut, and a whole lot more. And let's not forget the beer, which flows in abundance. The beers are served in 1-liter steins, which adds to the feeling of authenticity. Besides the food, the entertainment plays an important part in the Biergarten experience.
Welcome to the German Beer Garden. We're glad you're here.
Ticket! Oi, oi, oi!
When the Imagineers were considering Italy as a World Showcase Pavilion, they had the rich landscape of Italy to choose from, both physically and metaphorically. The country is a peninsula that has mountains, waterways, cultural icons, and a whole lot more. It borders on southern Europe and extends into the Mediterranean as well as into the Adriatic. And what's the one place in Italy that everyone thinks about when they think water? That would be the city of canals, Venice. Our World Showcase Pavilion is an homage to the culturally significant city that's been called La Dominante, Serenissima, and Queen of the Adriatic, and City of Water, and City of Masks, and City of Bridges, the floating city, and of course, the City of Canals. Venice is located just off the coast of mainland Italy, and it's really a series of 117 islands that are connected by bridges and a series of canals. Getting around by boat and foot is the easiest way to navigate the rather small area that's known as Venice. Now, each of the islands is known as a specific area. Many are named after heroes, patron saints, and historical figures. Disney's Italy Pavilion is modeled specifically after the area known as St. Mark's Square. The Imagineers duplicated it in size and scale, down to some very specific details, except for one, and it's kind of an important one. The plaza you see at the Italy Pavilion at Epcot is a mirror image of the original. The chief reason that it's the mirror image is because of the plot they selected. Being next to the American adventure, they had a little problem. The Dodge's Palace that we're going to discuss in a few minutes has a distinctive architecture to it, and its rear facade wouldn't fit in with the American adventure if you looked from that pavilion toward Italy. But the Sistine Chapel style building could fit in well if you were looking from the American adventure into Italy. In front of you are two columns, just as the real square has. The one on the left represents St. Mark, the patron saint for whom the plaza is named, and he's depicted as a winged lion. The one on the right is St. Theodore, the original patron saint of Venice. He's represented in human form slaying a dragon. On your left is the replica of the Doge's Palace. A Doge is essentially the equivalent of a duke, meaning that this was where royalty lived and worked, and so the magistrates could be found here. Straight back, the tall building is the Campanile, or bell tower. Again, this is a pretty exact replica of the original in most respects. Sitting atop the bell tower is the Archangel Gabriel. By the way, the tower you see here is a scaled-down version of the original, standing at about 1/5 scale. The statue of Gabriel atop the tower is just like the one in Venice, covered in gold leaf. Since gold is literally indestructible, the statue will never have to be cleaned or refurbished. If you continue on to the back of the pavilion, look to your right just past where the Kidcot station is. You'll see another exact replica of the Gabriel statue. In the middle of the pavilion is a replica of the Palazzo Ducale, the town gathering spot. It's a circular area that's raised up from the rest of the land. Now, the remaining buildings are not something you'd find in St. Mark's. The Fontana di Nettuno, or Neptune's fountain, is reminiscent of Rome's Trevi fountain, coupled with elements from Florentine sculpture that are mixed in there. Finally, the Il Bel Cristallo shop to the right is meant to resemble the exterior of the Sistine Chapel in Rome and would be 15th century architecture that's very different from what you would find in Venice. Be sure to look at the brickwork in Il Piazza beneath your feet. The beauty here is in the design. The pavilion includes kumquat trees, olive trees, orange, lemon, and other trees you might find in the Mediterranean region. You'll also see some grapevines as well as several container gardens. Musicians, clowns, and acting troupes often appear in the piazza throughout the day. Now, some people enjoy sampling adult beverages from the countries around World Showcase. There is a donkey cart near the Palazzo that offers wines and spumani to go. The pizza window also serves a variety of adult beverages, including a delightful lemon-flavored drink called limoncello. Of course, both restaurants have a number of beverages to enjoy, but as you may know, Italy is one of the world's greatest producers of fine wines. In fact, Italians consume over twice as much wine per year as Americans. So it should be no surprise that there is a wine cellar called Tutto Gusto that offers wine by the bottle as well as sampling menus. You can try several varieties of wines to find the one that suits your taste and take home a bottle or two. As far as restaurants, at Gelati you can get so much more than gelato at this quick service outdoor location. In Tutto Italia Ristorante, or Everything Italian, there's seating indoors and outdoors on the patio. Tutto is a great place for some old world Italian cuisine. Via Napoli is the newest addition, designed by the Florentine architects Stefano Nardini and Raffaele Melucci. Via Napoli's 3 wood-burning ovens pay tribute to the 3 active volcanoes in Italy, Etna, Vesuvio, and Stromboli. To do this, each of the 3 ovens are sculpted in the shape of a face of the god that their corresponding volcano is named after. The original plans for the pavilion called for 2 interesting showpieces, a gondola ride and a walkthrough of Roman ruins. These are both included in the original model for Epcot, so we get a sense of what they might have been like. The Roman ruins would have been an outdoor setting like the Colosseum, with similar architecture and some sort of walking tour. And that's the story about the pavilions here at Epcot that are represented in the World Showcase.